All right, so today we're going to be taking another look at the teachings of Master Junhong Lu.
Okay.
As a quick reminder for anyone who might be tuning in for the first time,
Right.
Master Lu is a world-renowned Buddhist teacher who founded 2OR Australia Oriental Radio and Television, and is a really prominent figure in Australia's Chinese community.
Yes.
You can learn a lot more about his background in episode 1.
Right.
But for now, let's kind of dive right into his approach to applying Buddhist principles to daily life.
Okay, yeah.
Specifically, you shared his writing called Objective of Practicing Buddhism and Cultivating One's Mind.
Right.
And I have to say, some of these ideas really got me thinking.
Yeah, it's a fascinating piece. He really emphasizes that you don't have to retreat from the world to find enlightenment.
Right.
But rather you engage with all the complexities.
Yeah, that's what struck me too.
Yeah.
He doesn't shy away from the fact that life can be tough.
Right.
But he says that instead of seeing those challenges as obstacles, we can use them to cultivate our minds and evolve spiritually.
Exactly, yeah. He breaks it down into 3 key aspects: disciplining actions, regulating speech, and elevating morality.
Okay.
And he's very clear that these are all interconnected. You can't just focus on one and ignore the other 2. They're like a tripod.
Okay.
All 3 legs are necessary for stability.
Let's unpack this a little bit.
Yeah.
So disciplining actions, I imagine that's about acting in accordance with the Buddhist precepts, right?
Yes, but it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
It goes deeper than just following rules. It's about cultivating genuine compassion and wisdom, not just going through the motions.
Right.
He writes, therefore, when we practice Buddhism, we need to discipline our actions, regulate our speech, and elevate our morality to prevent the creation of negative karma. It is about ensuring that our thoughts, speech, and actions are pure, and that our body, speech, and mind are in harmony.
Interesting. So it's not just what you do, but also the intention behind it.
Right.
That reminds me of the saying, like, the path to hell is paved with good intentions.
Exactly.
So you could do all the right things outwardly.
Right.
But if your heart's not aligned, are you truly cultivating your mind?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And Master Lu dives into this very idea.
Okay.
He uses an example of dealing with an unfair workload.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might not complain or make a fuss about it,
Right.
but are you truly not angry?
Right.
Is there resentment brewing under the surface?
That's a good point.
That's where the real work begins.
Wow. That's really insightful. It's like he's challenging us to examine all those subtle layers of our reactions.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to put on a good show outwardly, but true inner peace requires a much deeper level of self-awareness.
Right.
So how do we even begin to tackle that?
Well, Master Lu suggests that the journey of cultivating the mind starts with correcting it.
Okay.
And that begins with some serious self-reflection. He was a big proponent of looking inward, identifying our flaws, and really questioning our own assumptions about what's right and wrong.
This is where it gets tricky, right?
Absolutely.
Because what feels right to us might not actually be.
Yeah, we all have our biases.
Right, our blind spot.
Absolutely. And he has some really compelling examples in this writing.
Yeah.
He talks about a selfish person who justifies their actions by saying that, you know, everyone else would do the same thing.
Right.
Or the son who is estranged from his mother.
Right.
And he blames her for all his problems without acknowledging his own role in the conflict.
It's so easy to get stuck in those loops of self-justification.
It is.
We create these narratives in our minds that make us feel like the victim or even the hero sometimes.
Right.
Even when we're the ones causing the harm.
Yeah.
So how do we break free from that?
Well, Master Lu talks about the importance of accumulating merit and virtue.
Okay.
He uses this very powerful Chinese proverb: lay a solid foundation and reveal your strength modestly when the right time comes.
Okay, wait, let's break that down a little bit.
Okay.
What does he mean by laying a solid foundation?
So it's about consistently engaging in good deeds, working on self-improvement, and cultivating positive energy.
Okay.
It's not about seeking recognition or praise, but about steadily building that internal reservoir of strength and clarity.
It's like building spiritual muscle.
That's a great way to put it.
The more we practice kindness, compassion, and self-awareness,
Right.
the stronger we become internally.
Exactly.
And then when those challenging situations arise, when we're faced with that unfair workload or that difficult relationship, we have a stronger foundation to draw upon.
Yes.
We're less likely to get swept away by that anger, that resentment, or that self-justification.
Exactly.
So it's like he's saying, instead of waiting for some sudden epiphany or a moment of enlightenment,
Right.
we need to be actively building that inner strength every single day.
It's a journey, not a destination.
Right.
And the more diligently we cultivate our minds, the more equipped we become to navigate the challenges of life.
I love that.
But Master Lu makes it very clear that even experienced practitioners on this path encounter obstacles. And he introduces this concept that he calls the 3 poisons.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, and these are greed, hatred, and delusion.
Okay.
And they can be incredibly persistent, even when we think we've overcome them.
Right.
They're going to pop up in different forms, tempting us to stray from the path.
Right.
So Master Lu provides a really striking example in his writing.
Okay.
He talks about couples who cling to a relationship, even when the karmic affinity has clearly ended, causing immense pain for both people involved.
Wow.
It's a powerful illustration of how greed, in this case the greed for companionship, or the fear of being alone, can cloud our judgment and lead to suffering.
That's a really powerful image. It's like we become so attached to the idea of what we want that relationship to be.
Yeah.
That we lose sight of the reality of the situation.
Right.
Yeah, we just become blinded by that greed.
Exactly. And he also talks about people who are driven by this insatiable greed for wealth or status.
Right.
They're risking everything they've built just for a little bit more.
Yeah.
It's that constant striving, that inability to be content with what they already have that keeps us trapped in this cycle of desire and dissatisfaction.
And it makes me think about how often we operate from a place of scarcity, always feeling like we need more. But Master Lu suggests that understanding the impermanent nature of things can help us combat this greed.
Yes, he emphasizes that everything is in constant flux. Nothing lasts forever.
Right.
Even our possessions, our relationships, our very bodies are subject to change and decay.
Right.
Recognizing this can help us detach from that grasping, clinging energy of greed.
So it's not about denying our desires or pretending that we don't want things.
No.
It's about shifting our perspective, seeing those desires within the context of impermanence.
Precisely.
Yeah.
It's about cultivating a sense of contentment and gratitude for what we have in this moment, knowing that it won't last forever.
Okay, so Master Lu doesn't stop at greed.
No, he does not.
He also delves into the poison of hatred.
Right.
Which he says manifests in many forms. Anger, resentment, jealousy, and even self-loathing.
Yes.
I could see how hatred would be a major obstacle on the path to spiritual growth.
Yeah.
It's such a destructive force internally and externally.
It really is.
It creates so much conflict and suffering.
Absolutely. He writes, the second poison is hatred. When we develop hatred, we not only harm ourselves, but also others. Hatred can lead to violence, aggression, and other negative actions. When we are filled with hatred, we cannot be happy or peaceful. Hatred poisons our mind and makes us miserable.
That's really powerful. And it's interesting that he includes self-loathing in that definition. Because I think we often overlook how much we can turn that hatred inward towards ourselves.
Absolutely. That's a really important point.
Right.
He's very clear that true peace requires cultivating compassion.
Yeah.
Not only for others, but also for ourselves.
Great.
He encourages us to examine the roots of our hatred, to understand the pain and the fear that often fuel those feelings.
Right. So again, it comes back to that self-awareness.
Exactly.
That willingness to look inward even when it's uncomfortable. Yeah.
He suggests that one of the best antidotes to hatred is understanding the interconnectedness of all things. You know, when we recognize that we're all part of the same web of life,
Right.
our actions impact others and their actions impact us.
Yeah.
It becomes harder to hold on to those feelings of separation and animosity.
It's like that saying, hurt people hurt people.
Yes.
When we're consumed by hatred, we're not only hurting ourselves.
Right.
But also perpetuating a cycle of pain in the world.
Absolutely.
And then there's the third poison, delusion. This is where things get really fascinating.
Yeah, this is a good one.
We'll take a short break here, and we'll be back to explore how Master Lu addresses the third poison, delusion. Welcome back. Let's continue our discussion with Master Lu's insights on overcoming delusion and cultivating clarity of mind.
What does Master Lu mean by delusion?
So he's talking about the ways in which our minds create this distorted view of reality.
Okay.
We cling to false beliefs. We make all these assumptions. We get caught up in stories and narratives that aren't really true.
Yeah.
And these delusions prevent us from seeing things clearly
Okay.
and from understanding the true nature of ourselves and the world around us.
Can you give an example of what that might look like in everyday life?
Sure.
I'm trying to wrap my head around how delusion plays out.
Okay, so he gives an example of someone who is overly attached to their appearance, believing that their worth is tied to their physical beauty.
Right.
This is a delusion.
Okay.
Because true beauty comes from within.
Right.
It comes from cultivating qualities like kindness, compassion, and wisdom.
Yeah.
But when we're caught in this delusion,
Right.
we spend our lives chasing external validation, constantly comparing ourselves to others, and never feeling truly satisfied.
It's like we're building our sense of self on a foundation of sand.
Exactly.
It's so unstable, so easily shaken.
Yes. And Master Lu suggests that the way to combat delusion is to cultivate a clear and discerning mind.
Right.
This involves practicing mindfulness, paying attention to our thoughts and feelings without judgment,
Okay.
and questioning all our assumptions.
Right.
It's about learning to see things as they truly are without the filter of our own biases and preconceptions.
That's a good point. It sounds like this process of cultivating the mind is really about peeling away those layers of delusion, greed, and hatred to reveal our true nature.
Exactly.
But how do we even begin to do that in the midst of our busy, chaotic lives?
Well, Master Lu emphasizes that purity of mind is not about physical isolation.
Right.
Like it's about cleansing those inner defilements. He's not saying we need to retreat to a cave to find enlightenment.
Right.
In fact, he argues that the mundane world, with all its challenges and complexities, is actually the ideal environment for cultivating the mind.
That's a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
It is.
How can we find purity amidst all the messiness of life?
Well, he writes, it is not about escaping from the world, but about transforming our relationship with it. By engaging with the world mindfully, by applying these teachings in our daily interactions, we build resilience, wisdom, and compassion.
So it's about bringing that mindfulness, that awareness to everything we do.
Exactly.
How we react to a frustrating coworker, how we treat the cashier at the grocery store,
Right.
how we speak to our loved ones. These are all opportunities to practice.
Precisely. He gives a really powerful example of being insulted or treated unfairly.
Right. It's easy to react defensively,
Yeah.
to get caught up in that cycle of anger and resentment.
Right.
So Master Lu encourages us to take a different approach.
Yeah, he does.
To essentially rise above it.
Yes.
To not let those external actions dictate our internal state.
Yeah. He talks about detaching from the self and others, letting go of those biased perspectives that fuel our reactions.
Okay.
You know, it's about recognizing that the other person's actions are often driven by their own suffering, their own poisons.
Yeah, that's a powerful shift in perspective. It doesn't excuse the behavior, but it allows for more understanding.
Yes.
More compassion.
Right.
And it probably helps to prevent us from getting hooked into that cycle of negativity.
Exactly. And he stresses the importance of cultivating forbearance and diligence.
Right.
It's not about being passive or letting people walk all over us,
Right.
but responding with wisdom and compassion, even in the face of adversity.
Yeah, this reminds me of that quote from Viktor Frankl.
Okay.
Between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
Well, that's a beautiful quote.
Yeah.
It's a perfect way to put it.
Yeah.
Master Lu is essentially saying that by cultivating a settled mind, we expand that space between stimulus and response.
Right.
We become less reactive, more intentional in our actions.
And he connects this back to core Buddhist principles, like karma and the interconnectedness of life.
Yes.
He's reminding us that our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for others as well.
And that understanding can be incredibly empowering.
Right.
It helps us to see challenges not as random punishments, but as opportunities for growth and learning.
Yeah, it shifts that victim mentality into one of agency and responsibility.
Exactly.
And this journey of self-cultivation isn't just about us.
Right.
Master Lu emphasizes that it ripples outwards, impacting those around us.
Yeah. Yeah. He writes, in that way, we must focus on improving ourselves and our families, first of all. Only when our minds are free of obstructions do we have no fear. Then we can cultivate a clear and discerning mind. Then we can talk about how to cultivate our minds and help others to become spiritually awakened too.
It's a beautiful sentiment. By cultivating that inner peace,
Mm-hmm.
by understanding and applying these principles,
Yes.
we become more equipped to help others do the same.
Right.
We become beacons of compassion and wisdom in a world that desperately needs it.
That's the ultimate goal, isn't it?
Yeah, it
To
is.
create a more peaceful and compassionate world, one mind at a time.
It all comes back to that idea that daily life, our spiritual practice,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about retreating from the world,
Right.
but engaging with it in a more conscious,
Yes.
compassionate way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one line from Master Lu's writing really struck me.
Oh, yeah.
He says, Buddha Dharma is in our daily lives, and our daily lives also reflect Buddha Dharma.
Yeah.
It's so simple, yet so profound.
It really
It
is.
highlights that interconnectedness, the
Mhm.
idea that enlightenment isn't this distant goal,
Right.
but something we can access in every moment,
Yes.
in every interaction.
In every interaction.
It's about shifting our perspective,
Right.
seeing the mundane through a spiritual lens.
That's what I found so empowering about his approach.
Me too.
You know, he's not saying we need to become monks or live in a monastery to
Right.
cultivate our minds.
Yeah.
He's saying that the grocery store, the traffic jam,
Yeah.
that difficult conversation with a family member,
Yeah.
these can all become opportunities for spiritual growth
Yeah.
if we approach them with the right mindset.
That's what I love about Master Luby.
Mm.
He's so practical.
He is.
He encourages us to apply these teachings not just in moments of crisis,
Mm-hmm.
but in those everyday interactions.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
how we react to a frustrating coworker,
Yeah.
how we treat the cashier at the grocery store,
Right.
how we speak to our loved ones.
Yeah.
These are all chances to practice what we've learned,
Exactly. It's about bringing that awareness, that
Mm.
mindfulness to everything we do.
which I have to admit can feel daunting at times.
It can.
It's a lifelong practice for sure.
It is, but even small steps matter.
Yeah.
Each act of kindness, each moment of self-reflection, each time we choose compassion over anger,
Right.
we're strengthening that spiritual foundation.
I love that.
Yeah.
And hopefully those ripples spread outwards, creating a more peaceful and compassionate world.
Yes. And so to leave our listeners with a thought to ponder,
Okay.
what does it look like for you to make daily life your spiritual practice?
Mm-hmm.
What small shifts can you make today to bring more mindfulness,
Yeah.
more compassion into your interactions with the world?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's a question worth exploring.
Right.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone.
Mhm.
You know, if you'd like to delve deeper into Master Junhong Lu's teachings,
Yeah.
we've included links and further reading in the show notes for this episode.
And as always, we love hearing from you.
Yeah, we do.
If there's a topic you're curious about, something you'd like us to deep dive into,
Right?
send us an email.
Mm-hmm.
We're always excited to explore new areas of knowledge together.
Absolutely.
Until next time,
Mm-hmm.
keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.